And first thing that you may notice that your name is my name, Zhen Cong, and I'm sorry that share the link is my personal link. So would you please rename yourself to your real name? And Aaron, would you please type in the chat and just make announcements for people to rename themselves so we can see their name. Thank you so much. And first thing, welcome. And thanks for joining today's meeting. My name is Zhen Cong, Associate Professor in the School of Social Work at the University of Texas at Arlington. Can you see me? Okay, great, thank you. It's exciting that we will have 3 presentations today by researchers from different disciplines with related topics on social connections and COVID-19. After that, we will have time for discussions on barriers and challenges, opportunities for interdisciplinary collaborations. Please note that today's presentations and the Q&A sessions will be recorded. We will stop recording when we start the moderated discussion section to better support the frank and open discussions. Here, following the rule of NSF, because this is an NSF-sponsored conference, we will foster a harassment-free environment, and it is of ultimate importance for us to respect each other and be inclusive. I would also like to encourage you to turn on your cameras so we will be able to see each other in this virtual environment as if we were really in a real meeting, so we can see each other. And as I just mentioned, that today's virtual session is a part of a NSF-sponsored conference on Build and Broaden social connections associated with COVID-19. We have another virtual session scheduled on September 17th. The physical conference will be held on October 7th and 8th in Arlington, Texas. We also have planned to have follow-up sessions after the conference. We will keep on updating our website on speakers and the schedules. The purpose of the series of activities of this conference is to promote interdisciplinary dialogues and foster fruitful collaborations to address critical social needs as society is experiencing, adapting to, and recovering from COVID-19 pandemic. The conference addresses fundamental research questions of the role of social connections as a key form of social capital for individuals and communities adapting to changes after high-impact disasters and extreme events. COVID-19 has resulted in unprecedented impact. We are living in this, and everyone experiences differently. We see mass losses of lives, struggling, pain, expanded social and health disparities. But we also see courage, support, and resilience. Interdisciplinary dialogues and collaborations are particularly important for us to identify critical questions, integrate data, and develop innovative methods and solutions to inform policymaking and interventions. NSF has made tremendous efforts to promote interdisciplinary collaborations. The concept of convergent science has promoted the development of many programs. For example, the Smart and Connected Communities, Convergence Accelerator, Coastlines and People, Designing Accountable Software Systems. All those programs promote the dialogue and well-integrated collaborations among disciplines. To echo the convergence theme, we have confirmed speakers from a variety of fields for the overall conference, including sociology, computer science, statistics, industrial engineering, social work, gerontology, and nursing, etc. Our speakers also include government officers and community members. We hope the conference will provide an opportunity for us to talk to those who we usually do not talk a lot together. For example, we identified several promising areas of interdisciplinary collaborations, including using computer and information technology as enabling tools for social connections, applying artificial intelligence and machine learning in enabling social connections and community resilience, and using social and behavioral theory-informed agent-based modeling to examine and assess health, social, and economic disparities among at-risk and vulnerable communities. I would hope to take this chance to introduce and acknowledge the contributions of our conference planning committee. The committee is an interdisciplinary team, and we have extensive dialogues and previous collaborations on a variety of projects, which helps us to recognize the importance of social connections and the great potential for interdisciplinary collaboration in this area. Dr. Gautam Day is Professor and Associate Dean for Research in the College of Engineering at the University of Texas at Arlington. Dr. Day, would you please say hi and briefly introduce yourself?
Yeah, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Gautam Das, and thanks, Zen, for the brief introduction. I'm a professor in computer science and engineering at the University of Texas in Arlington. I also wear another hat. I am the Associate Dean for Research of the College of Engineering of UTA. And I have seen a lot of interesting interdisciplinary projects that have been going on in and around our campus. And this is yet another effort which I'm very excited about. And I'm looking forward to your participation in today's discussion.
Thank you so much, Dr. Day. Dr. Aaron Higdorn is Assistant Dean for Research and Faculty Affairs in the School of Social Work at UTA. Dr. Higdorn, would you please say hi and briefly introduce yourself?
Thank you, everyone. Thank you so much for joining. It's been my honor to work at University of Texas Arlington the last 2 years as we build and develop our research on social connections and its impact on health. I really appreciate you joining today.
Thank you so much, Dr. Higdorn. Dr. Yuan Zhou is Assistant Professor in the Department of Industrial Manufacturing and Systems Engineering at UTA. Dr. Zhou, would you please say hi and briefly introduce yourself?
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. So I'm Assistant Professor in Industrial Engineering. My area is more focused on the complex system modeling and in particular agent-based simulation. So during this COVID pandemic, I'm also working on some research project related to COVID, understanding how to come up with some mitigation strategies to combat or fight with this disease. I'm very looking forward to our presentations today, and thank you so much.
Thank you. We have another member, Dr. Ling Xu, Associate Professor of Social Work at UTA. She's not able to join us today. And thank you so much for your contributions, our committee. About today's meeting, we have presentations, and please type in your questions to the speakers in the chat box when you get any. After each presentation, we will have 5 to 10 minutes of Q&A session, and Dr. Gautam will summarize those questions and present them to the speakers. After the 3 presentations, we will have a discussion section moderated by Dr. Natalie Villanueva Rosali. We will stop recording at that time to better support discussions. Now, let me briefly introduce our first speaker today, and then I will turn over to Dr. Jin to start today's presentation. Dr. Fang Jin is Assistant Professor in the Department of Statistics at the George Washington University. She obtained her PhD degree in the Department of Computer Science from Virginia Tech. She leads a data discovery lab, and her research focuses on deep learning, machine learning, data mining, natural language processing, anomaly detection, and spatial temporal data analysis. She has a great interest in public health. Her work has been oriented to design machine learning algorithms to assist smart health in communities. Generally speaking, her research seeks to apply machine learning into big data to discover deep insights for social good, including opiate addiction, X-ray images, COVID-19 tracking. Dr. Jin serves as associate editor at prestigious journals and also serve as program committee chair and a member for prestigious international conferences. And if you want to know more about Dr. Jin, we have more detailed bio of her at our website. And her presentation today is Build COVID-19 Knowledge Graph using Deep Learning. Thank you so much, Dr. Jin, and we look forward to your presentation.
Thank you so much, Jen. Thank you so much for the nice introduction. It's really my great honor to to give a talk at today's conference. So yeah, so we just started this topic for a few months. So feel free to ask me any questions. Where to start? So first, maybe we can talk about what's knowledge graph, because our audience have diverse background. If you already know this, bear with me. Let me introduce what's knowledge graph. So the knowledge graph was first introduced by Google in 2012. The purpose it used it to interlink the data and assist the search queries. For example, when we look at this picture, we see the Da Vinci, we also see it connected with the Mona Lisa, connected with Italy, connected with its colleagues. So to summarize, the knowledge graph have three purposes. It can help find the right thing, can get the best summary, can go deeper and broader. So it represents a collection of interlinked description of entities. So this is knowledge graph. Maybe you heard of it already. So that's the formal definition of the knowledge graph. So what motivated us to develop a knowledge graph of the COVID-19? We know since the first identified case of COVID-19, there are plenty of pharmaceutics have been tested for the COVID-19 treatment. So since then, the sheer number of studies, treatments, and associated reports make it extremely challenging to keep track of the rapidly growing COVID-19 research landscape. So how to put all those reports discovered together, get an overview, go deeper, zoom in to find their relationship. We need sophisticated tools. Because of this, and also, you may consider there are so many data sources that come from come from everywhere, involve so many topics. So we're wondering if we can develop a knowledge graph, can identify their interlinkage, their relationship, and better represent those knowledges. So, so based on this, we plan to construct a COVID-19 knowledge graph to promote the knowledge sharing. No, we cannot include everything so far. We have tried to focus on the clinical results and also the COVID-19 the symptoms, and try to answer questions related with COVID-19 symptoms. Also, we did a small study about COVID-19 facts and rumors. So that's basically three parts of the knowledge graph we plan to incorporate. So for the clinical result, we have an overview structure or framework. Most of the clinical result we see is from the PDF format. So our framework is first, given the PDF file, we're going to extract that, transform into XML format or some flexible format. We can find the exact information. And then we're going to segment the main body into a title, author, abstract, introduction. And then of those interest part, for example, abstract, introduction, conclusion, we want to do a summarization because if we put all the text together, it'll be way too much. So we want to summarize each PDF, what they're talking about, what's the point of this, like what's the conclusion, or what's their discovery. We want to summarize the report or the PDF file. And then we use the name entity extraction method to find what kind of subject. For example, if there's some medication, what's this? How this medication is that useful or positive for certain treatment? So we want to find their relationship after extract their name entities. So then we do the relationship extraction, And finally, after every components are ready, we're going to generate the knowledge graph. So KG is knowledge graph. So knowledge graph generation. And that's the full framework for the PDF file. And there are some other formats. So besides the text, the image, the sheet, so we all, after doing at least a series of processing, for example, relationship extraction, content analysis, graph extraction, and then we align those graphs together to generate knowledge graph. So that's the overview framework of our knowledge graph. So where the data source come from for the COVID-19, the clinical trial result, most of the papers we extract from the COVID-19 Help, this .com, this website. From there, we see the number of them. They have many research. The latest research outcomes come from there. And when we look at the table, we see they kind of specifically discuss certain medicines. If we interested in certain medicine, for example, this HCQ, if we're interested in this HCQ medicine, we'll see there are many papers talking about their discussion, their result. Like this is their title, so that we can download those PDF files or download those clinical results. So that's all this. And then, when we come back to our framework, after we extract the PDF files or clinical result, we need to extract those documents, right? So from the PDF, we use the Groby. It's a developed software. So we use this tool to transform that into the XML format. From those XML format, we're able to extract the main body to get the main body of the PDF files. So that, the XML file is much easier to handle, right? From here, we're able to do the text summary. So the text summary, actually, there are kind of, there are two ways to summarize a text. One is to keep the original format. The other is to generate a new text, because we want to keep there are many. We want to keep the generated result as close to the original file as possible. So we use the we keep the original date. And we keep the original structure of the sentence actually, but only pick those important sentences we feel like it can well represent this PDF. For example, there are some conclusions. If it's related, if it's specifically talking about a certain medicine, certain treatment, a certain problem, or suitable for which group of people, for those kind of important keywords. Once we identify those are entities we are interested in, we are going to keep those as our summary. So what's the name entity, right? So what's the name entity recognition? Name entity recognition, we can call it name entity identification or anything, entity extraction. So we're going to extract the useful information. It is so that we need to locate a classified named entity mentioned in unstructured text and into predefined category, such as we're able to identify this is the person name, this organization, this location, this medical codes, this time, this quantity, any kind of thing. So those are the generalized named entity recognition. For example, like Jordan was born in Brooklyn, New York, we are able to identify this is the person, Jordan is the person, location is Brooklyn, and New York is the location. So this is the name entity recognition. This actual name entity recognition is already well developed in the information retrieval, but this is not enough. This is not enough for our COVID-19 research. Why, right? Why is this not enough? Because in the clinical trials, those generalized name entity recognition cannot well capture those different medicines, the symptoms, adverse events, the diagnosis, the medications. That's why we're going to use this another specialized bioclinical NLP models standard so that we can get the specific. For example, when we look at this, we can see a sore throat is actually is a problem, and like this is KBL liquid. We know this is about treatment. That's what we want, right? So we want to be specific, be accurate, and it is supposed to identify certain. This is the problem. This is the treatment. This is the medicine. This is symptoms. We hope they can able to extract those or classify those into different categories. So when we go deeper, we can see the aspirin is a kind of anti-inflammatory drug. So we see this is a treatment. So from there, we can see what kind of problem. This is the problem, this is treatment. They're able to at least accurately classify what is treatment, what is the problem. Okay, so name entity extraction, it can extract the names, entities, so that like we can tell this is the treatment and this is the problem. But this is not enough, right? Only know what kind of organization, what kind of person, what kind of problem, what kind of treatment is not enough. We still need to know what's the relationship, right? Is this used to cure? This medicine is able to cure this problem, or are able to improve a certain condition? So we want to find the relationship, such as improve or lead to certain conditions or getting worse. Those kind of relationship, we still need to extract that. So we have to go to the relationship extraction task. So this is the relationship extraction task. For example, this picture shows example, right? It can, like in the Wikipedia, you know, when you click someone, it can go to connect to the other links. So that's another kind of relationship. For example, it's kind of the children relationship. Some come from others. That's another kind of relationship. So generally speaking, this relationship extraction, we cannot miss their relationship. So so like this is one example we get from the name entity extraction. From here, we get the for example, this is able to develop. Usually for the relationship extraction, we pay close attention to those verbs or adverbs. So this those kind of words typically represent some important represent some relationship. For example, looking at this table, we will see some relationship we capture like a need, or resulted, or assessed, include. So this kind of or evaluated. So those are some relationship extraction examples we get from those data set. Okay, so now it kind of we already get the name entities. We're able to capture what's the problem, what's the treatment, and then we capture the relationship, so that we're able to putting them together to generate a knowledge graph. This is an example of our knowledge graph, which generated from some articles or some PDFs. We can see some like each node represent a entity. The entity could be a medicine name, or could be some symptoms, or could be like for example HCLQ. This is certain kind of a certain treatment. This is COVID. So this is an example of a knowledge graph. When we type in, it allows us to type in to search. For example, if we type in a medicine name, this HCQ, when we type in this HCQ name, it will return a subgroup, a subgraph. So this subgraph, it can tell the HCQ is used to treat the HCQ group. It failed in the viral clearance interval. It improves the COVID-19. It used in certain treatment. It blocks the infectivity of the virus. So this is all the findings from those COVID-19 report. Okay, so they allow us to type into search. So this is the subgraph. When we click the COVID-19, then we will see the COVID-19 features. It will tell us, actually, when you click any kind of node, it will result more detailed information of this node. For example, this COVID-19, it will tell you it comes from which paper, the paper name. So when you from here, right, from HCQ, we get the subgraph. When we double click the COVID-19, we will go to another subgraph. So here is COVID-19. Definitely, the COVID-19 have more connections. So it connects more other medicines. Those medicines are used to treat the COVID-19 as well. For example, this medicine improves the COVID-19. So like this COVID-19 raise mortality rate. So we see when we click COVID-19, it has more connections and which also associated with more relationships. So later we are going to show you the demo. So we also compare with baseline model. Our method actually is more efficient. If we only plot the baseline knowledge graph, they don't have the text summarization. They are not able to capture the relationship across the different name entities. Then most of the nodes kind of more isolated. It's difficult to connect with other entities, so that it will difficult to show the interlinkage or relationship or interactions. And also our method is able to so even with the more article numbers, the number of nodes doesn't increase exponentially because we know many medical reports, they kind of discuss because we have a focus topic about COVID-19. So many are more about oriented with those symptoms, those treatment groups. So it shows our method is superior with the baseline models. Okay, so far we have talked about the clinical trials, and we generated clinical trials, integrated that into the knowledge graph. Second part, we want to talk about the symptoms. And we try to develop a question answering modeling, hoping can answer some simple questions regarding certain COVID-19 related symptoms. So what's question answering? You actually know the question answering, right? When you call some customer service, sometimes they try to ask the machine to answer your questions. At certain times, it's difficult to tell, is this the real person or is that actually machine there? So that's the question answer system. So formally, the question answer is a computer science discipline within the field of information retrieval and natural language processing. We call it NLP. This is a building system hoping can automatically answer questions posed by humans in a natural language. So for example, if you type a question, what's the symptoms of coronavirus? They are going to return you some answers. So this is the question answer. We want to develop a system which can generate answers. Okay, and so first is the data extraction, right? To help answer questions related with symptoms, we must be able to extract what's the symptoms, right? What's the symptoms? Given a text, for example, this is the text, a paragraph from Wikipedia, And we want to use the NLP to automatically annotate the text. For example, we will see what is the symptoms, what is the treatment. For example, this is like a fluid therapy or oxygen support, something like this or that. So we can able to accurately annotate each symptoms, the treatment, medications, and then so we are able to see this treatment, this medication, this device, what's the symptom, like the oxygen support, this is about treatment, what kind of position is kind of treatment. So at least we should be able to tell what's the problem, right? So Google already developed a powerful natural language processing model named BERT in 2018. It can represent the state-of-art result in a wide variety of NLP tasks. So we pre-trained the BERT model based on a medical corpus, UMLS. Then we fine-tune our model based on the Wikipedia. So we use a Wikipedia dataset as our input. And our goal is able to extract the symptoms, diagnosis, medications, as well as adverse events, treatment, those kind of things. So from the neural network model, from the, like for example, the word embedding neural networks, we were able to generate the natural language processing models, which able to extract the symptoms, diagnosis, medications. So this is Wikipedia data set. And then we find the associations among the symptoms and treatment. So after we're able to understanding what's the symptoms, what's the treatment, we will see how the question answer neural network works. So this is given a general question answer model. It composed with interpreter, inquiry, and answer model. So basically the inquiry, it takes the language, it takes the, for example, this is the interpreter, it interprets the questions. And then the inquiry part is going to interact with the knowledge base, retrieve the relevant factor from the knowledge base, and then summarize the result in a vector. So like here, it summarizes it in a vector, and then the answer will this is the answer part. The answer part is going to feed the question representation as well as the vectors and generate answer with the generator. So that's basically how the question answer model works. So for example, given a context, suppose the context is, this is the training data set. Suppose I have had a low-grade fever for 2 days. I went to the hospital today and the doctor prescribed me some medicine, told me to take a break. So this is a context. If you ask a question, where did I go today? Then they will return your answer, the hospital. How to deal with fever? They will tell you this is the medicine they give you. What did the doctor tell me to do? The answer is take a break. So this example, it shows you given the context. So this is our test data set. Our question answer model is able to answer you the questions based on the data set you gave. So that's the generalized question answering. And then, so if we get a more Wikipedia training data set, we suppose we give some examples, how to treat a fever, how to treat a cough, then they will return you some answers for you. For example, this is the treatment plan for cough. They will see based on the underlying cause, you can take the cough medicine, cover your mouth, nose. So this is some examples, some example answers they give you. And then, for example, diarrhea. Clearly, because actually how they answer this question is depends on the training data set. Depends how the training data set tell you. The model itself, it doesn't have this intelligence. It's not a doctor. It cannot tell you how to treat the diarrhea, how to treat the vomiting. It totally depends on your what kind of data set you feed in. Because all this data set we get from the Wikipedia, we exhaust all the Wikipedia, how, of the different articles, how they treat diarrhea. And our model, the job our model do is more than like extract the treatment strategy, treatment plan. So this is the treatment plan for the diarrhea. Plain water continue to be fed, something like this. So this is our answer for the treatment plan for diarrhea. And beyond that, we extend our model into to extract the symptoms from the social media post. For example, suppose you have suppose someone, this is someone's post, right? Have had a horrible cough since Sunday night, last night fall asleep with a horrible cough, something like this, starting to lose my sense of smell. All this kind of a description. This is a description. So that using the QA model, if we ask questions, what are my COVID-19 symptoms? Ask this question, they are able to return the symptoms to you: horrible cough, fall asleep with a horrible cough, and a pounding headache, starting to lose my sense of smell. So this will be the answer they return to extract the symptoms, because your question is, what are my COVID-19 symptoms? So this is kind of more smart. Okay, then come back to our knowledge graph. So in our knowledge graph, it allows you to type the symptoms. For example, I felt cold last night and muscle pains, but I don't have headache. Suppose this is what you type, then they're able to tell your predicted symptoms is, this is your predicted symptoms. Okay, you have fever, no headache, so they didn't see the headache. They didn't show the headache. And so you have two symptoms. So one is fever, one is this malaria. So malaria. So they have two treatment plans for you. One is fever, one is malaria. And the treatment is fever does not necessarily need to be treated. So all this is your treatment plan for you. Okay. So this is the second component we incorporate into our knowledge graph is the symptoms question and answer. Besides that, we also do some rumor detection work. We want to classify the rumors and the factors, because they are kind of, there are many rumors about COVID-19 related. So we want to do the text cleaning and classify. So our purpose is we want to develop a classification algorithm to detect the COVID-19 related rumors and factors. So we use we try the different methods. We try the backwards, the word embedding, and we extract the features. We try the different classification methods, and we classify that into two categories. From the social media, we have one category is about the truth or fact. The other is about rumors. When you click one node, they will show you what kind of node it shows. Actually, this cannot, to be specifically, this should not be called as a knowledge graph. This is more than present the factors and rumors in the format of graph. Okay. So this is the last one. And then, so the last piece is we're going to show you the demo. So I'm going to stop sharing here and we'll go to the, website. So I can send you the link to the chat. You can also play yourself. So this is only a kind of a toy. For example, this is suppose you type in the HCQ. When you click it, it will return what kind of connection it connected to different nodes. Yeah. So. Okay, it's a little bit slow. So this is the full knowledge graph about the drugs, about the clinical result. So if you click, if you're interested in certain nodes, you click that. For example, here it allows you to type HCQ. So they will return the HCQ subgroup to you. All the HCQ related treatment, HCQ group, how the HCQ group alleviate a cough. What else? Okay, yeah. So this is okay. I must click on this node. So different node you can play around. Another is the question answer. You can try to type in. For example, I type in, I feel cold last night, but I don't have a headache. They will show you the treatment we suggest is fever, does not necessarily need to be treated. So what's your symptoms? You can type. But just pay attention, this is only a toy for self-diagnosis. Don't treat it too seriously. If you really have some symptoms, go to see the doctor. So this is our platform. If you are interested in our work, this is our group. This is our group's website. So I'm going to stop sharing here. Next, welcome questions. Thank you so much, everyone.
Zen, you're muted.
Jen, you are muted.
Yeah, thank you so much for the presentation. Dr. Gautam, would you please present the question to Dr. Jin?
Sure. Yeah, Dr. Zen, thank you for a fascinating presentation. So I'm not sure how much time we have for questions, but I guess there is one question in the chat box from Amy. I guess this is more like a philosophical question. So her question is, this information that you get from the knowledge graph and the tools that you build, the platforms that you build, how do you see it being used for social connections and community resilience building? Do you think this tool is primarily for healthcare experts, or do you think this can be used by the general public? And if so, can you give some ideas? I hope that's my interpretation of Amy's question.
Thank you for the next question. This is a great question. I think Dr. Des, maybe you stand a higher position than me, so maybe you can also help answer this question. For me, right now, the work we are done, like the first one, we are focused on the clinical trials. We try to extract the relationship, or we try to summarize those different interconnections from different clinical results. So this is more help with the clinicians. From the community, for the community level, we used to, actually this year we submitted a proposal to NSF talking about how can we use the knowledge graph to help guide people's social behaviors. Wondering like, we want to kind of integrate the knowledge, especially about people's behaviors into the knowledge graph format. It depends, actually. Yeah, I don't know how much it could help people. This is more than like a knowledge representation format.
Thank you so much for answering that. I can give a little clarity too. I've got a team here who does in the community work with folks who are struggling with social connections and lost social connections because of the pandemic. So I think we were under the impression that we would be talking today about some of those things that we could use when we work with the community. But it sounds like you're in a different phase of what you're working on, but potentially in the future, deep knowledge graphs could be used to influence social behaviors. Is that right?
For us, we kind of propose to integrate the knowledge graph into like apps or some smartphones. We want to kind of guide people's social behaviors under the, for example, under the certain situations. But we haven't done this. Actually, we only proposed.
Well, that's really, I think that's really interesting too. What do you think might happen? What do you think that next step could look like if that kind of works out the way you think it might?
Because our motivation is because depends on the COVID-19 situations, like there are certain policies or regulations, it keeps changing. So we want to find a tool, it can rapidly and detailed kind of help people to adopt different behavior regulations.
Wonderful, thank you.
Thank you so much.
So in the interest of time, I'm going to read out one more question, and then after that, hopefully we can move on, because I guess, Zen, correct me if I'm wrong, we have both speakers today, right? The two remaining speakers.
Yeah, we have 3 speakers. Yeah,
a total of 3 speakers. So this question is from Victor Fishman. How can you share some thoughts on how to handle intrinsic biases in the data structure?
Bias data structure?
Yeah, that's the question. Because basically the knowledge graph that you build is pretty much dependent on the input data that you provide, right? The PDF files and all that. And suppose the data itself is biased, it will impact the knowledge that you extract from it, right? And again, I'm interpreting Victor's question the best I can, but that's my interpretation.
For example, the biased. Yeah, that's really a good question. For the biased data set, do you mean the opinion or the knowledge they represent is not necessary to be objective, or it's what kind of bias?
Hey, this is Victor. If I could help just that. And I really enjoyed your presentation. So my sense is that as you collect data, sometimes it's very difficult to collect every scrap of all the sources, while your data collection may be skewed in some way, and you might not even realize that. And I'm wondering how it is what thoughts you might have to accommodate this kind of interest.
Right. That's really a good question. It could happen, actually. We didn't even realize this. So how to handle this situation?
I think I have a suggestion. It depends to the learning process of your knowledge graph also, how much data you want to keep, and the data structure maybe can be dynamic. I don't know, because of learning process of your knowledge graph.
So I think let us do the following. In the interest of time, let us leave this questions in a tantalizing form where they clearly need further discussions. I'm sure the esteemed speakers are available by email and other mediums, and we may get some time later on today. I'm not too sure whether we can have a more unmoderated chat on some of these questions. So let's shelve these questions and answers and keep them to the end of today's session. With this, thank you very much for the presentation. And let us move on to the next speaker.
Okay, thank you so much, Dr. Day. And yeah, I just think that we have a lot of potential to carry on this discussion later. And actually, I think all these questions are wonderful questions. And Actually, using the social media has been a great platform people to connect with each other and use the deep learning and machine learning and the natural language processing thing. I just see a lot of potential for the interdisciplinary collaborations, like, just use Dr. Jin's methods. We can identify the special needs connected to special population, vulnerable population, like older adults, minority populations. And it is also possible, just if we change the keywords from a certain medication, we can use that linked to some specific treatment, like social interventions, and to identify their effectiveness in affecting people's social behaviors, there to improve their loneliness. Actually, I have a question, possibly I will talk with Dr. Jin later. If I type in the question, I feel lonely, then what will be the outcome for that? So I think that this is amazing. I just think that we have a lot of potential, and I really will encourage people to reach out to Dr. Jin for questions, for collaborations, for future opportunities. And I will hope to see you again in the future and have this kind of discussions going on. Thank you so much. I just think it is a discussion amazing, and we have limited time. So let's go to the second presentations by Dr. Natalia Villanueva Rosali. She's Associate Professor of Computer Science at the University of Texas at El Paso. Her work aims to improve the efficiency and effectiveness of the discovery, integration, and the trust of data and models. Her approaches link human and machine knowledge to address societal relevant problems in areas that require interdisciplinary research and collaboration across institutions and borders, such as sustainability of water resources, smart cities, and social connectedness. She obtained a PhD in computer science from Carleton University, Canada, and holds an MSc in artificial intelligence from the University of Edinburgh, and a bachelor's in computer science from the Pan American University in Aguascalientes. She is in Mexico. She is passionate about encouraging and supporting women and Hispanics pursuing a career of education in science and engineering, and participate in several initiatives towards this goal. Welcome, Natalie, and we look forward to your presentation.
Thank you. Can you see my slide well?
Yes.
Yes, I'm sorry for all the words difficult to pronounce. But you did a great job. I appreciate it. So good afternoon, everyone. I'm Natalia Villanueva Rosales, and it is my pleasure to share with you this project that we have and some efforts that we are doing towards social connectedness, especially with older adults. So I do have a short presentation, so we could have some questions at the end as well. And this is really guidelines for me to talk about this project. So I know we have some time at the end for questions, but I wouldn't mind if someone has a question to raise them. I think it's kind of tricky to see the chat. I'm going to try and see it while I'm presenting. So I am going to start. Let me see. Here it is. And you're looking at the second slide now, right? Yes. Okay. Thank you. So I'm going to talk about the Smart Social Connector. This is actually coming from the Smart Connected Communities program at NSF. So you were talking about that before at the beginning. Is one of the programs that support these interdisciplinary projects that also are very connected to the community. So this is an interdisciplinary approach. And for this presentation, I actually listed all the PIs, co-PIs, senior personnel, and I will talk about the community partners that we have, because I think it is really aligned with the goals that you have for this conference. Not only is interdisciplinary, but it's collaborative, it's interinstitutional. So in our research team, we have Dr. Ashley Banger. She's from psychology department and cognitive psychology. So she brings that expertise to us. Dr. Mondragon, he's from computer science. He has worked on software engineering, smart cities, but also high performance teams. So you'll see how everything comes together. We also have Araceli Guerra, who is with the Department of Information and Technology Services. Let me try and move this. That I see Human Resources and Performance Office of the City of El Paso. So we have the engagement of the City of El Paso because we are we're getting guidance from them as to all the approaches, all the tools that we develop, and the smart city solutions align with the infrastructure that they have, because part of our sustainability plan is that these solutions are adopted and maintained by the city of El Paso at the end of this project. Then we have Mary Yanez, who's with the senior adult program at El Paso Community College. Is one of our KPIs. You will see that we have KPIs from the city and EPCC, which shows that they are really part of the project. We have Gina Nunez. She is with anthropology, and she brings the social network expertise to our team, along with community engagement and another very important knowledge and skills that we need for the project. We have Dr. Kelvin Chu from Civil Engineering Department, and we also have, a long list of community partners. We partner with a part of the city, El Paso Parks and Recreation, with the senior centers, the Office of Accessibility and ADA, the Department of IT that I mentioned before, and the Osher Lifelong Learning Institute at UTEP. So all of these to address social isolation among older adults, right? So I'm going to go to the next one. So we know that when COVID pandemic hit, and we actually submitted this before COVID, and we got it during COVID. We had to do some changes about it, but we had already anticipated that, social connectedness can actually be fostered through technology. This conference is one example of that. Many of us just went into Zoom, went into other tools, started teaching online to keep ourselves and our community safe, right? We can use online services, we can use mobile application. Many services were transformed into a way that we could access them online. However, this will connect some people, but for other people, for example, that lack technological skills, limited awareness, and this is particularly true for older adults, and accessibility issues in the tools that we currently have, they hinder seniors' use of technology. So there are many digital divides. The one that we are focusing here is the generational digital divide. Older adults using lesser technology that we use, and therefore creating this divide that contributes to social isolation, especially when people are using these tools to connect with each other, and they are not used at the same pace or at the same rate. The learning and adoption of this tool is different for older adults, and this is very important. Seniors is one of the most growing population in the following decades, and we expect to have. So we need to think about how can we improve the services that are provided for seniors? How can we assist them to really look at how they can better use this technology? Let me go back and look at this. So the goal of our project is to develop and sustain social connectedness to seniors, right? Especially with the use of technology, but not only the ones that are remotely and with the use of technology. So we hope that these seniors that are here, and let me try, I believe I should be able to, I don't see, I was trying to do the annotations here. I don't see them, but that's fine. You see these people on the left that are disconnected, that are isolated through this project that we have with technology, with social sciences, with the community, can then turn and be and extend and strengthen their social network. So there are many particular techniques that we are using, and by leveraging previous collaborations that we had with the city, previous collaborations that we had among the research team and with the community. Again, this is very important. And I heard the question before, this type of projects, we really need to engage the community and the older adults from the beginning and the design, right? Not at the end. So, but from the beginning, we are working on this. So I'm gonna talk a little bit about, here we go, the approach that we have. So our approach or goal or objectives are two-pronged. The first one, as researchers, we want to advance the systemic and behavioral factors, right? What are the cognitive factors, social factors, physical factors, cultural factors, economic factors, technological factors that impact the learning and adoption of technologies in older adults, so we can increase the social connectedness and bridge the generational divide. And this is the one of the main goals that we hope to achieve, right? Increase the social and technological connectedness. So how they connect, how they access services through smart city solutions. So we will have in our approach several assessments. So our partnership with EPCC and the Senior Adult Program is that we will be able to do this cognitive assessment, team performance measures in the classes that are being taught at the Senior Adult Program at EPCC. So we are hoping to learn from them. We are hoping to do some interventions and measure what works better for the community. Again, this is for the city of El Paso here in the southern border of the US and all to the west of Texas. We also want to do the analysis of social network. So we want to see if there is, through these interventions, if there is an increase and strengthening of their social network. Then again, we're going to be designing these courses to go there, but we're also designing this infrastructure. And I want to go back here because there is something I have learned about collaborating with people from other disciplines is that sometimes the technology is not enough. You really need the human component. You really need to leverage these partnerships so that we can all have a common goal. So we will be building this smart city solution that will integrate data. We'll have them across the city. We will build some apps taking into account privacy, but we want to make sure that this is responding to the needs of the community. Now, the needs of the community, as you may imagine, have changed because of COVID. So we did some change into our project so far. So we were initially going to work with seniors, but everything became virtual, right? And we at EPCC, as the same as our universities, they were responding to it. So now we are talking to the instructors who saw this change, the instructors that were able to see on these courses, what were the things that work, what were the strategies that they recommend. So we have a little bit of change on that. So we will have focus group surveys and all those human studies, but also these user-centered iterative design and testing of the solutions. Again, the solutions we envision to have some web framework or web infrastructure where we can offer access to different courses or services, but something that we are also exploring is the crowdsourcing, and this will be on the impact. Why? Because we want for older adults to share the wealth of knowledge that they have through technology. So let me go here, and I'm going to go to the next one. So the impact is that we are expecting to create these informed strategies of how adults learn and adopt technology and how we can align the resources with the community needs. How can they have access the same way we have access to technology, and investigate and document which are the strategies that are more effective. We are hoping that what we learn can also be leveraged by other communities that also want to have this same goal of including older adults in services that they offer online or they are transitioned to be offered online, promoting meaningful social connectedness among older adults, creating a sense of belonging with their community. We want technology to be part of how they interact and contribute to the community, and in that way support them in their technology self-efficacy. And again, we want to we're looking into crowdsourcing mechanisms where they can contribute and bring back to the community. Why is this important? Because with these efforts, we want to have shifting attitudes towards older adults by the community and by themselves. So we are also measuring these perceptions or attitudes at the beginning and at the end of their participation in the project, so they can have more visibility. I also have another project that we did in the summer of 2020 that I just wanted to mention it. The results are being analyzed. We're almost there in the publication. So we wanted to understand the use of technology and how they communicated and access services during COVID. So this is before our project was funded, and this was funded by an interdisciplinary grant at UTEP, and we were able to survey older adults who were visiting the drive-through meal distribution at the City of El Paso Senior Centers. So we wanted to learn about, again, what were the main motivation to come, what happened when they shifted to online services, and what tools they were using to communicate. We also survey service providers from El Paso Parks and Recreation, the senior centers, and most of our responders were 55 and older. We had a bilingual survey. We are in a bicultural community. So responses, we had them in English and Spanish for the seniors. So we are publishing this as we speak and getting these results. If you are interested, certainly reach out to me and we'll be happy to share our results. This is it's a subgroup of this large grant group and led by Dr. Vanguard. So I really wanted to hear what would be your questions and your input about this project. Again, we had to shift and adapt. We got this project in October 2020, and it was when we were still responding to COVID, and we are learning, again, for now, we are learning about how was a transition for these courses, because now the courses were not just about technology. Now the courses were about everything, right? Since physical activity, arts, all kind of nice courses that they have. How was this experience and what did they notice? Because we saw this as an opportunity where people had to do it, right? It was not a matter of, do you prefer to take these courses or access these resources online? But it was, they had to switch to online. We're also working on the social network and the high performance team and the privacy, preparing for the technical part, but we are learning from more on the social part, what is needed. So with this, I will end here, and I would like to hear if you have any questions. I don't know if I can access the chat. And I know there will be more discussions about interdisciplinary collaborations at the end, I hope we have some time for that.
So, so the invitation to the audience, if you have any questions, please type it in the chat box and I will read them out. Okay, so we have one question from Catherine Labrenz. I hope I did not butcher the name too badly. So thank you for the interesting presentation, Dr. Villanova. How has the pandemic impacted community-based research? Yeah, no, that's right. We just couldn't start doing it, right? All the plans that we had, we didn't go because the senior centers were closed. We were start with senior centers and El Paso Community College. And we were evaluating some of the assessments that we required to be in person and whatnot. So I think we saw this more than, I probably can stop sharing, more than a barrier as an opportunity. Everyone started thinking about isolation, right? I think all of us in the meeting maybe even realized
the effect of isolation. And this is the same effect that has had on older adults that don't have the mobility to go to places the same way that we do, or that are afraid, to fall, or the doctor's appointment are important for them. So it impacted some of the plans, but like I said, we started looking into what had happened with the instructors that were teaching these courses. And we are also getting ready and preparing some of the work with our seniors. I think the human subject work was the most affected. We, at that point, we didn't even know what things we could do virtually or not. And you may also be aware that even if we were able to reach out or get information, reach out to seniors, we didn't have the guarantee that they will have a computer and a good internet connection, right? So we continue working with our main partner, El Paso Community College. Like I said, we are now also partnering with Oli at UTEP. Both offer courses for older adults in our community. So I think that was the most effective. Now, I have to say, we also have, and I believe I did not include it on the slides, we also work on building our community network, especially our community advisory board, where we have a lot of people working with older adults in the city and in the county. So we have our board, we have discussed ideas, we are listening for their feedback.
Thank you. So I don't see any other questions from the chat, but I had a question for you.
Sure.
So, from the computer science technology side, what new challenges has the pandemic thrown up that needed to be resolved? Or did you think that existing technological solutions that were being already used in smart cities could basically be easily repurposed for handling this situation?
So we have two issues. Thank you for your question. On the computer science techniques, one of the main things that we are addressing is privacy. Not only the privacy and security that you offer, right? Encryption and all those techniques, but also how you communicate privacy to older adults. We all do accept, right? Oh, accept, or you can. How can we explain in simpler terms what is the implication of you sharing your information? As I mentioned, one of the key components from the computer science perspective, and I don't see computer science perspective anymore because our team is so integrated that everyone has a say, right? I think the social aspect, when you are sharing your information to help the community, but what are the potential threats to your information when you are sharing that information? So that is one, and the second one is certainly the usability. For that's why we have our cognitive psychologists that can see what are the usability issues of current tools, like you said, for older adults. Are they ready? Are they not? And that's why we are going to be evaluating certain components that are common across a lot of the tools that we normally use to access services and apps, websites and apps online, so we can see what are the things that our study shows that need more attention. So I would say accessibility, usability, but also the privacy. I would say that was one of the main things that we looked at. And this was even before the pandemic. We had another work for mobility and funded by the Department of Transportation. So we had this work on trying to figure out what were the needs that were not met with current applications. So from that, we started looking at more details, and then we realized it's not the app itself, but it's even the technology itself, the use of the cell phone, the use of tablets. I hope that answers your question.
I think it does. Thank you very much. We have one more question from the audience, from Dr. Victor Fishman. So he says, I noted your comment earlier about the isolation of senior populations. Would you think that the prior research on senior populations might be instructive and applicable with respect to the more general pandemic-driven isolation.
And my question would be for Victor Fishman, the general pandemic for the whole population, is that what you're getting at? Yes, not only seniors. Probably so. That's how I'm doing the interpretations, right?
Right.
That's what I mean. Thank you.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, I hope we get that information. There are certainly things that will be applicable only to the older population. The next population that we looked at were people with mobility impairments and other impairments. That's why we are with the Office of Accessibility and ADA at the city. But I think many things should be applicable. Certainly the work on crowdsourcing, certainly the work on usability, what works better, what can make, I mean, when we, one of the things that we've always said, at least with a research group, the better you can develop tools, the better you can develop processes for one segment of the population, it will definitely benefit all the population, right? So I think certainly we should learn from there and extend it. Absolutely.
Okay, thank you very much. So I don't see any more immediate questions from the audience, but I'm sure if we have a final discussion session, there will be folks who will have more questions. And I'm also encouraging everybody to reach out to Dr. Villanova in the future with additional questions which they haven't thought of right now. Thank you so much for your very fascinating presentation. All of us learned a lot about it, and I think it will definitely stimulate multidisciplinary research, as you yourself have shown. And with that, I would like to turn over the the mic to Zen to continue to introduce our third speaker.
Yeah, thank you so much, Dr. Villanueva Rosales, for your excellent presentation, and thanks for all those kind of wonderful questions. I think the presentation is very inspiring. You have mentioned some kind of very important topics about interactions of human technology, and technology cannot solve everything. We have to come back to the human side, and that is very important. And also you acknowledge the contributions of older adults to the community. I think that is a very important part for us to continue exploring how to connect the older adults to the community and how to make them contribute to the community. And also you have introduced in details how the team is consist and their different expertise to make this happen. I think it's excellent. And Dr. Villanueva Rosales has also generously agreed to moderate a discussion on interdisciplinary collaboration. And I think your work is really exemplary of the building our interdisciplinary team. We will go as much as we can. Let's finish the next presentation, and we will see how much time we have for the discussion. Thank you so much. Thank you. Our next presentation is Dr. Catherine Labrenz. She is an assistant professor at the University of Texas at Arlington School of Social Work. Prior to academia, Dr. Labrenz worked in Latin America with families involved in child welfare systems. She earned a BA in Spanish and Sociology from the University of Michigan, an MSW from the Pontifical Catholic University of Chile, and a PhD from the University of Texas at Austin. Dr. Labrenz's research is informed by her practice experiences and focuses on supporting families involved with child welfare. Her current research examines interventions to support families post-permanence. And Dr. Labrenz has current projects that target birth families and adoptive families. The underlying goal of Dr. Labrenz's research is to empower families to build resilience and break cycles of maltreatment. Dr. Labrenz, welcome, and thank you so much. Look forward to your presentation.
Thank you so much for that presentation. And I appreciate the opportunity to talk a little bit about my research today with you all. I think it was really interesting to hear the research from Dr. Jin and Dr. Villanueva Rosales. And I think this research connects in the terms of social connectedness, of resilience. It also ventures into these social sciences and very qualitative world where I'll explain a little bit how some of the work I've done has led to the study I'm presenting on today. And so I'm actually really interested to have thoughts and comments and a good discussion, especially it seems like there's a lot of engineers and people from math on the call, because although this is specific to social work professionals, I think there's a lot of themes that would be really fascinating to explore in some of the other sciences as well. And so as Dr. Kong mentioned, my background is really in child welfare and building family and community resilience. And so during the COVID-19 pandemic, I started a study looking at ways that families with infants and young children were coping and adapting. At the same time, two of my colleagues in Chile had been conducting an ongoing study for a few years about social work over time and the professionalization of social work in Chile. And they were looking specifically at generations of social work and how female academics made decisions and really the work-life balance of female academics and how that impacted gender disparities. So we collaborated on a few other papers and we got to talking and we decided kind of to blend some of what we'd been finding in our two studies to do an exploration of narratives and giving voice to 3 female academics in a self-interview autoethnography approach to really understand the tensions, challenges, and resistance that those of us on the academic trajectory have faced since the beginning of the COVID-19 pandemic. So this is a collaboration that I've been working on, as I mentioned, with 2 colleagues from the University of Chile, Gabriela Rubilar Donoso and Catherine Galas. Both of whom we have, with the 2 of them, we've actually developed a few papers, one of which is published. There's 2 that are, one's accepted and one's under review. So I'm happy to share those with anyone that's interested. One's in Spanish and 2 are in English as of now. Move on. So when we think about academia, and again, this is really specific to social work that we framed this study, but academia at large, we have what usually is referred to as a linear process. And so you have people that enter after a PhD or after a postdoc that are junior or early career faculty. Usually there's a linear progression to a mid-career point and a senior point. And if we look generally in academia, we see gender disparities. And so some research in social sciences has talked about a glass elevator versus a glass ceiling, and that can be for leadership positions, whether it's in industry or in academia itself, especially in social sciences and fields where that may be female dominated. We see a large proportion of females that are undergraduates, smaller at the graduate level. And as you go up in academia to higher levels, the gender disparities get larger. And there have been a lot of recent studies. The bottom citations are all from 2020, where we see that the highest proportions, for example, of female faculty tend to be at the early career level, and that proportions of females taper off as academic rate increases. So as we get to associate level, as we get to full, and then if we look at any positions like deanships, provost, presidents of universities, we can look nationwide and we see gender disparities growing at each ascending rank. And this is something that in the case of the authors and I is true for both the US and Chile. And there will be a few explanations possibly for that we'll get into. And so we see gender disparities both in terms of leadership and who is in these positions, but we also see gender disparities in some outcomes that are key to achieving this linear succession or linear progress. And so we can see gender disparities in things like citations, what type of research is being published, the H index. We can look at base salary and see gender disparities in there. And there was also a recent study that found even invitations for keynote speakers at conferences or colloquium speakers, there were gender disparities in invitations to those, and what proportion of male versus female professors were given those type of opportunities, all of which can impact, again, this linear trajectory. And so one concept that has been talked about a little bit as a possible explanation for some of the disparities is the concept of academic capitalism and productivity. And so when you look at the case of higher education in the US and also in Chile, you see what is some have described as academic capitalism, or almost a market-like behavior. And so when you talk about market-like behaviors, it's this idea that there's limited resources. So there's limited funding opportunities, there's limited grants, there's limited space in academic journals. And essentially what that means is that there's a sense of academic capitalism in which professors need to compete for these very limited resources. And so if we look at tenure track trajectories, we see 3 different domains that may be impacted by academic capitalism and by some of the disparities in things like citations or types of research that are privileged. And that is research, teaching, and service. And so within each of these areas, again, we can look at how gender disparities and things like presentations to be a keynote speaker or guest lecture that may fall under service. We can look at gender and race and how they intersect with teaching evaluations, and how women faculty and faculty of color across the board tend to score lower on teaching evaluations than white faculty. For research, we can look again at publications, what type is prioritized, funding opportunities, and who tends to get funding. If you just look, for example, at NSF or NIH and look at who the PIs are and what is the largest proportion by gender, we can see disparities emerging in all 3 of these areas. And so if we ask ourselves why, again, trying to get at resilience and ways that we can address some of these barriers, there's a lot of literature that has brought up several different potential reasons that some of these disparities might exist. And so some of the literature has looked at climate or organization. Networks is another big one. So this can be professional networks, this can be support networks, type of research that's prioritized. What I had mentioned previously, like disparities in teaching evaluations. And then the big one, which will connect to this current study, is ongoing disparities in childcare and child rearing. And so when we think about the COVID-19 pandemic, especially, and the disruptions globally, definitely nationwide and also across the globe in childcare, where many families experience disruptions, we see that gendered roles within the family still have resulted in women feeling a dual burden or the burden of more childcare responsibilities than men. And when we look at academia and what this means for academia going forward, there are very direct implications. And so there's 2 concepts from the feminist perspective in literature that have been developed that apply to this study and that framed how we conducted this study. And that's the dual burden and the triple shift. And so essentially the dual burden is a phrase that was coined in the 1990s. And we know that women are entering the workforce at much higher rates now than in a few decades past. But the dual burden is this idea, again, that because of gendered stereotypes, because of gendered norms in our society, even when women have employment at the same rate or higher than a partner, they tend to take on the majority of childcare burden and childcare responsibilities. And this leads to the triple shift in which women who have children that work outside of the home have to balance or find a way to reconcile the demands of work, childcare, and other domestic tasks. And so again, if we contextualize this to the COVID-19 pandemic, we can start to see the impact of the triple shift exacerbated, as not only is there this childcare outside of normal childcare hours that women are responsible, but now that we have remote education, remote learning, we have disruptions in childcare centers that were open previously. And of course, as we all know, the COVID-19 pandemic is ongoing, so we won't know the full consequences for quite some time. And the world around us is constantly changing, but there is some initial research that was fairly troubling that found that female authored publications decreased significantly during the first several months of the pandemic compared to male authored publications. And so what we almost see in one sense is males and or females without children during the pandemic were able to use the work from home or remote instance to be more productive. Whereas those with children or with other caregiving duties at home had to balance and juggle essentially many more roles that impeded research. And so the main research question that guided this study was, how have academic mothers and social work been impacted by the COVID-19 pandemic? Again, fusing these two studies that we had been doing previously, the one on social work, female social work professionals in Chile, and then fusing that with the family impact and trying to adapt and essentially build resilience in the face of the pandemic. And so to start this research project, we used a qualitative autobiographical narrative approach. And what that entails is essentially 3 academic mothers had 3 separate journaling sessions where they would write down at different significant points in time or transition points and journal the impact that the pandemic was having on them, on their work, on their children. And then the 3 would meet to discuss what was going on. And so this approach allows the subjects of social processes themselves to establish an understanding of the social conditions they've experienced. So this is very different from the secondary data analysis or other research that I've done more traditionally. And it also aligns fairly well actually with, in some ways, with the core components or the core beliefs of community-based research, because essentially in this process, we're letting the subjects, ourselves in this case, be the people who are understanding and interpreting our own stories and the impact that it has on ourselves. And so the idea of this process, again, is really to give the power and give the voice to those who are directly experiencing it. And so instead of being a subject of research, you're an active participant and actually an active guided researcher who's making sense of the world around yourself. And so a little bit on the participants, and these of course are pseudonyms, so you can't exactly identify. So we have one who had a 3-year-old at the time of this study who was married in the USA and was an assistant professor. We have one who was single in Chile, who was an associate professor with a 7-year-old who did have special needs. And then we have one who was divorced and was the director of a social work program in Chile and had 2 teenagers at the time of the study. And so as the participants, they reflected different countries, different stages of the academic career, and also children at different developmental ages. And so through this process of writing down and journaling narratives and then comparing themes, there were 3 main themes that emerged. And so the first one was this tension between this idea of bodies that produce and reproduce. So having responsibilities related to child caring, child rearing, but also having that need to meet the productivity expectations and demands. Then the triple shift of academic mothers. So talking about trying to balance it all, trying to make it all work when there's deadlines, when there's school assignments, when there's other responsibilities. And then the last narrative that emerged was tactics for resistance, and really looking at ways to build resilience, but also to challenge the status quo. And so in the spirit of this type of research, I really wanted to bring in some of the quotes. Now, these were all translated because the originals were done in Spanish. But I did want to at least give voice to the people that were directly experiencing this. And so for the first one, one of the things that was really came out in the interviews was this change in public versus private. And so for female academics and mother academics specifically, what used to be a complete separation and having your private life at home now was all fused together. And so one of the mothers in Chile said, "I've seen how things have become public. Things that before the pandemic were considered private, like my love life, move to a new home, or acquisition of new furniture to adapt my home to the conditions of my job that my job required. And so here we're seeing, again, spaces that some of the mothers purposefully kept intentionally separate or private from their colleagues, from their students, suddenly became, again, fused together, and with the inability to have the separation of their work and their home life. The next mother who had this, the 7-year-old with special needs, said, "I see some colleagues reading books and writing articles while I can't even read 2 pages in a row of anything. At the end, we decided to use fake documents to take B to my parents and then have at least 2 or 3 days a week without having to take care of him. On those days, I dedicated myself to making up lost time and tasks. Our society assumes that mothers should always be the ones with their children. I feel extremely alone." And so in this sense, the feeling of isolation, of being completely separate from everyone else, and also of feeling that burden essentially of being the one that everyone expects to take on that responsibility, impacted this person's ability to continue to produce and continue at the rate that the academic capitalism essentially would demand. For the triple shift, there was a quote, "The call comes from daycare. For the second time since we sent M back to school, they call us to let us know that one of her classmates has tested positive for COVID-19. We just adapted to this new normal, and we have yet another disruption to our routine." So just as in this case, this person found a balance, there were constant changes and constant ruptures and disruptors, and then tensions in this balance of work and family life. And then the mother of 2 teenagers that was in Chile said, "Making my house double as an office has been without doubt a challenge. I've learned quickly and through various mistakes to turn off my microphone and camera quickly to respond to issues that emerge at home, where the barrier between public and private life has been destroyed. After 10 months of the pandemic, I can say that I have found a new way of organizing my work, to have breaks to eat, chat with my children, do some cleaning, or try to disconnect after hours of online teaching and meetings." And so here was an example where it took the person essentially 10 months to get into a routine. But she was trying to find something that worked, something to be able to balance these different roles that she had. And then for tactics for resistance, we had one of the mothers that talked about creating solidarity among various people who are conscious of the intentional invisibility of the triple shift that's imposed on us. Using technology, we've opened spaces to process the challenges that have emerged in the pandemic, but also to share forums to overcome the pressure and make new connections with academics. This allows us to not get stuck on our own trajectories. It's a small example of not assuming that we're all invisible, but rather giving us an opportunity to create alliances and to support one another. And so in this sense, we saw this mother took the initiative to find online communities using technology, trying to develop social connections, whether it be with other academic mothers who are juggling similar tensions between productivity and their family responsibilities, or whether it be with other mothers that had other types of employment, but were also going through similar processes. And so in discussion, the narratives presented here reflect the challenges that 3 academic mothers have tried to reconcile or navigate, specifically related to this triple shift and dual burden of blurring boundaries that's resulted from remote work and remote learning during the COVID-19 pandemic. So again, this blending and meshing together of the public and private spaces has created more of a burden, especially for mothers that have taken on more of the childcare and child care duties since the pandemic began. And so if we think about even before the pandemic, gender disparities in academia and a lot of the literature in terms of positions of power, in terms of promotion and tenure, we see that mother academics, even before the pandemic, were at a disadvantage. And with these narratives, our goal was really to give voice to academic mothers who've been impacted by the pandemic and exploring unique cases that have very unique and contextual factors, but are also united by these concepts of the dual burden and trying to balance and manage it all. So some of the limitations are, for now, it's just 3. All of the academics had relative privilege. So all highly educated in tenure track or tenured positions. One was married, the other 2 had a partner that had some or other sources of outside networks and support that could help them. Also, just to contextualize, Chile and the US have very similar models of higher education. And so thinking about the transferability of this, one thing that we're planning on doing as a next step, because this was just an initial very in-depth with 3, is we would like to see, whether it's expanding and including more social workers or looking at faculty members in other disciplines as well to see how salient these themes are, or if there's different themes that emerge. I'd be curious in the discussion also. I know that in social work, it might be a little more open to talk about this work-life balance and the expectations, whereas I don't know in non-female dominated fields if that's the same case. And so thinking about implications going forward, again, the implications and the impact of the pandemic we're going to be feeling for years. And so continuing to incorporate these narratives and listening to the voices of people impacted to understand tenure and promotion and gender disparities in that, looking at ways to organize and find opportunities for support and to create these support networks and social connectedness and normalcy, essentially, of parenting and caregiving duties. And then definitely for research, incorporating other voices, and then perhaps matching some of these narratives and these themes that emerge to ongoing statistics as they come out and as the impact of the pandemic continues to be felt about things like publications, like research projects, so that we're seeing and matching the narratives of individuals that are directly impacted to what the national or international figures are telling us. So that's my email. I will put it in the chat as well. I would love any questions or any discussion about this, because again, this is like a very small pilot we started, but I think all 3 of us are very interested in ways that we could incorporate other voices. Thank you.
Thank you, Catherine. Fascinating presentation. I'd like to invite the audience if they have any questions. So while they're thinking of what questions to ask, I actually had a question for you. Which has been the most surprising finding in your studies? Something that really you would have never imagined, or maybe in hindsight it makes sense, but you'd have never thought of it going into the pandemic.
Yeah, that's a great question. And I will say again, this is connected to other studies that I have ongoing during the pandemic. I mean, one thing for me, and I guess it's not so much as a surprise as like, I guess something positive I've gotten out of this is I feel like the natural human condition towards resilience. And so I think the creativity and innovation that I've seen both in these 3 narratives, but then also in the interviews I've been doing with families in our communities, how creative people have been essentially to be able to make it work. And, feeling this dual burden or feeling this triple shift of balancing these different identities, coming up with strategies like, there was a quote the other day in one of the interviews of someone who, has an outdoor soccer practice for 1 hour. And so they bring their computer and they drive just close enough to get the Wi-Fi at McDonald's, and they're able to connect and work from the car while the kids entertained at soccer. And then they're able to go back. And it's, again, exhausting, but at the same time, it's finding ways to make it work and make it cope, while also looking at some of these larger structural changes that really need to be made as well.
We have a question from Victor from the audience. Do you think that much of your research might apply to single academic parent environments in general? In general, not necessarily COVID.
Yeah,
that's what I think. That's what I think the question is.
Yes, I think it's a good question. And I would say yes. And I think that also, again, in this study, but also in some of the ones with families that we've been doing, we have one ongoing with student parents as well. So undergraduate, graduate students who have caregiving responsibilities. And I think what we're finding, I mean, I honestly, I don't know that there are new challenges with the COVID-19 pandemic. I think what it's doing is it's exacerbating all already existing issues. And it's really, you know, what before was invisible. That's what I really like about that one quote. What was kind of invisible and something, oh, you don't talk about that. Or we just focus on our work. And, you know, if you can have your family life or anything outside of it, it's forcing us to discuss it openly. And it's making it a lot more visible, because now when you're on a faculty meeting, if you're at home, even if you have on a background or a blurred screen, you can see sometimes, you know, people's kids walking by, you can hear interruptions, whereas before that didn't happen as much.
So I think what we will do is, since we have about 15 minutes more before the session is over, if it's okay with with everybody, I'm going to transit over directly to the discussion session. Zen, is that fine? You know, and then at least get a few of the interesting discussion questions to be answered by our speakers today. So that will be a good way to utilize the remaining 15 minutes. Now, of course, if people want to stay a little bit longer, they are welcome to. I myself, unfortunately, have another meeting I have to go to, but I'll be happy to, I'll look forward to the next 15 minutes at least.
Yes, thank you so much. We try to make the best use of the time we have. So I will turn this over to Dr. Villanueva Rosali. So I think just do as much as you can to moderate the discussion and open up the discussion for barriers and challenges for interdisciplinary collaborations. I will not have closing remarks, so just to make the best use of the time, and hope to see you next time. Thank you so much for everyone. Excellent. Thank you. Really appreciate that.
Thank you.
Dr.
Here is, I couldn't find the menu where I have the microphone. It just showed up. It was just a slow connection. So thank you. I think we'll have only a few minutes. So I'm just gonna go straight away to the questions. We had some introductions, but let's go right to the questions. And I think we mentioned we were not going to record this session. So I think if you could stop the recording, it would be great. Please raise your hand using Zoom icon if you want to speak, but at this point, maybe just unmute yourself. When it's the first time that you are talking, please introduce yourself so we know who you are. We would like to ask everyone to have only one participant speaking at the same time, if that's correct. So we do have a few questions, and I don't know if someone would like just to start saying, why do you think